Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Laura Show, and more importantly, happy 2024. I can't even believe we're finally here. I'm now on my second year of hosting this podcast, and it's been an absolute blast. Today's guest I really wanted to bring on at the start of the year because we want to talk about all things finances. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's been some rumors and some speculation, and maybe some people have confirmed it. Who knows what's going on in the world, but there's this thing called a recession out there that we're all kind of dealing with and trying to manage and figure out what we're doing. And I wanted to bring on someone who I thought could help us all with this because I know I need some help. I'm sure you guys need some help as well. So Libby Wildman, thank you so much for joining me today.
So fun to be here.
You're going to help us unpack a lot.
We're going to unpack a lot. For 2000, I just want to say, yes, we are, Canada's in a recession. Canada actually...
So you're confirming it then for me.
Well, I don't know whether, the feds are going to say that or not, but yes. Canadians are the most indebted consumers in the world. People do not believe that. They think that the Americans are. And the American country is in trouble financially, but Americans are way better off than Canadians. Canada, as a country, is doing well. But the banks have basically loaned every single person as much money as they could possibly loan. And as you know, interest rates are going up, or they have gone up a lot.
That's so interesting. Because when you think back to, say, 2008, for example, I think the concern was that Americans were way too over-leveraged and the banks were giving them too much money. So I guess they kind of corrected that, but Canadians maybe didn't follow suit so much.
I just think that Canadians don't understand the truth of it, really. Yes. And as a fiduciary investment counsel firm, we don't mind what's happening in Canada because we only invest in companies in the U.S. Mm-hmm. But from my client's point of view, I talked to someone last week whose mortgage is coming up in April, I think. And if rates don't move, that's going to be another $600 a month for them, which is going to eat into something, either savings or lifestyle or the renovation they want to do. Or something and like
certainly
that.
Add to the amount of stress in that household, right?
Yeah.
Right? We always forget that component of it. I should probably make it clear to everyone because they're thinking, well, who, besides the great suit, like who am I listening to here? Libby, you are the head of wealth advisory for Davis Ray. You have obviously quite the career. I went and stalked you a little bit online, but maybe you can kind of just give us a little bit of the Coles Notes of your journey into where you are today.
Yeah. Well, I'm 58 now, so I've been around for a few decades. So that's why there's quite the journey. And, I won't be that horrible speech maker at the wedding where they say we met in kindergarten. But in 1988, when I was looking for a job with my 3-year English degree, because I just wanted to get out and start to work, my dad said, get a job with Xerox or IBM or London Life because they'll train you.
Yes.
I mean, it was a very different world. And so I chose to work for London Life because he was there and they had an excellent training program. So then you were licensed to either sell insurance and do financial planning or you were licensed to do money. And it wasn't until the 90s when the banks, the insurance companies, and the investment houses all started to buy each other. Right? Scotia McLeod used to be Scotia Bank and McLeod Young Weir. RBC used to be Dominion Securities and RBC, and now they're all merged, right? Yeah. So my career was very much steeped in taxation, financial planning, and what I found, Laura, and this is why I have stayed in the business for so long, because only 2 out of 10 people stay in the industry. It's hard.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to find clients. Once you have a client, it's fun what you're doing and helping them with. But what I found was once people opened up and shared with you their money story, because I'm almost tired of the word shame around money, but there's embarrassment, there's shame, there's so much riding on who you are as a person, as to what you're making, how much you have, what does your family have, what's your title, what car do you drive.
Status is wrapped up in
all
it,
of
right?
that. Yeah. Once people told me their money story, they then opened up about, quite frankly, how's their marriage, what's going on with their kids, what's their health like, what's going on with their parents, like all these deeply, deeply personal things. And I brought you the Living Lux magazine, and because I'm the financial contributor there, and one of the articles I think I wrote 2 magazines ago,
Actually, and while you're talking about that, maybe Yas, can you grab these Living Lux? I'm going to put these right over here because I have 2 of these sitting on my coffee table at home, so we're going to add these 2 right here.
Well,
here as well.
Jennifer Lipkowitz and Anthony Sirianni have done a beautiful job.
It's a great magazine, yes.
Well, they have invested in paper, but in like really high quality paper, and I think it's one of the most beautiful magazines
No one has that anymore. You know what I mean? Like everything's digital and online, and there is something to the tactile and reading something and flipping through the paper while drinking your coffee in the morning or a magazine. So
exactly.
So I think that actually might be how I found you.
Creating your vision board. I've had a bunch of young people come up to me and say, oh my God, I didn't know you wrote for the magazine, but I bought it to cut out and make my vision board. And anyway, so I wrote this article about the fact that people are willing to get in between the sheets with each other, but they're not willing to talk about their spreadsheet. And I've had a number of people say to me, you know, I'm in a new relationship. At what point should I be starting to talk about money? And I'm like, well, have you slept together? Oh, yeah.
That's all on the first date.
That's all good. And I'm like, well, what do they make? What do they owe? What do you owe? Are you a spendthrift? Is saving important? Because there's generations of money stories that happen that will greatly influence how you are with money. And one of the biggest reasons for failure with relationships are having different money styles.
I've read that, and it seems so shocking. Like you would think, you know, like how people choose to parent their kids or what people like to do with their free time and their lifestyle. But it really is the financial component that gets in the way. And it's kind of funny because I feel, correct me if I'm wrong, but like women have come so far, right, in our careers. I mean, look at us both sitting here. You know, maybe our parents wouldn't have even thought of that or dreamt of that for us, given how they grew up. So there's been a lot of change in some regard, but I still feel like the conversation around money maybe hasn't changed as quickly as some other things in our society. Would you say that that's maybe accurate?
Yeah, I think it's still quite taboo. Interestingly, about women, and I mean, you tend to hang out in like circles, so you may have a lot of friends who are career women, as do I, but only 11% of women make over $100,000 in North America, and that is a really shockingly low number because...
Well, can you tell me do you know what the number is for men? Just so I can compare it?
I think the number for men, I think it's 23%.
Don't worry, we won't quote you just on the podcast.
I wasn't focusing on that. But the point was
11%.
that for a city like Toronto, you need to make $85,000 a year to cover your basics, your food, your car, your phone, your TTC, your rent, or your mortgage, or whatever. So it's so talking about stress and thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? It's a scary thing. So I also think living in Toronto, which is one of the most multinational cities in the world, that we have cultural differences that go on. And so money may be taboo for one reason if you've moved here from one country, or if you've been living here your whole life, might be taboo for a different reason. So we get cultural issues going on. But essentially, most of us, certainly in my generation, grew up with, you know, dad took care of the money. I think that's changing. And I think, funnily enough, that's actually hard on men now. Yes. Because they were brought up to be the head of the house. And now they're...
What does it say about them now, right? Like if it's not... And there's so much wrapped up into that. And it's funny, yesterday I had a podcast with someone. We were just talking about like the way in which you were raised, right? Like so my dad... banker his whole life, worked his way up the ranks at Bank of Montreal. My mom, stay-at-home mom. Like, I absolutely love my upbringing, having her there. Yeah. But now, me looking at it, I'm thinking, like, I don't know if I could make that sacrifice and stay at home. Financially, I don't even know if I could make that sacrifice if I had children to stay at home. It might not make sense now, given the cost of living here in Toronto, like you said. I'm curious for you, because you have an English degree, was there, besides your dad kind of saying, like, you could, you know, work here, was there a pivotal moment for you that said, I want to get into this line of business? Like, was there something that you can kind of say, yeah, you know, that really helped shape me and made me want to go down this path?
100%. I love people's stories, and everybody has a story. And so when you're studying English, obviously you're involved in stories and character building. And I truly believe every single person has a beautiful story. And part of what I think I'm really, really good at is being able to empathize with people, figure out their story, and then say, well, where do you go from here? So one of the issues, so there's a very well-known saying that with wealth, the first generation makes it, the second generation enjoys it, and the third generation breaks it.
Yeah.
So I've really thought a lot about this, and over the years and years and years of listening to my clients share their stories, which often involve tears, anger, often I'm really almost like a psychologist with couples or families, which is such a beautiful honor to be there and to help people with their stories. But what I figured out is it really comes down to your values, and that's where people knock heads. So, for instance, you have, we had a family that were Asian, so the parents lived in China. Mm-hmm. They sent their kids to Harvard. The kids came back to China to run the family business, but now they'd been educated at Harvard, and in China, your value system is based around community. And others, family first. You go to Harvard and you step into the North American value system and it's about me, I. So these parents who thought they were doing this incredible thing to help their business grow and, keep up with what's going on in the new trends, now are having a value clash with their children. And what does money mean? Also, what do you want to do with your money? Because one generation may be all about being not flashy,
yes,
right?
Conservative,
and conservative, and the next generation is, no, money is my status symbol. So what I really, really enjoy working on with the different generations is understanding what is your value, and then being able to help each generation or each couple in a marriage have their own perspective as, what do you want money to do for you? Money is not part of you. Money doesn't have a personality. It doesn't hate you. It doesn't run away from you. It doesn't give a shit about you, quite frankly. We care about money. Money doesn't care about us. So once we can define what your value system is, money can then be a gift to really launch what your value system is.
That's so interesting. I was kind of smirking earlier when you said, that you're a bit of a therapist, because in my office I have these two chairs, and I call them the therapist chairs, because so often either my real estate clients will come in, and just like you said, when people start to tell you where the money is, how much money they have hidden under the mattress and things like that, at that point, they're completely open, right? And that trust takes a bit of time to build. On the flip side, with my real estate clients, people will say, like, look, Laura, my goal is X. Quite frankly, the number, I don't know why, but every real estate agent, their goal is, I want to make $1 million. The amount of real estate agents I've heard say that just seems to be the number that we all think we should make. That's like a success, when like the average person, like there's very few people in the world who make over $1 million. Right? Like we were talking about, only 11% of women make over $100,000. So the audacity for us all to think that we're going to earn $1 million is pretty high. Not to say that they can't or they shouldn't want that, but I tend to go to the next phase of the question, which is the why. Right? So you must spend a lot of time with people like why on the values, because they must say, well, I want to create financial freedom. And then do you go down to the next question? Like, so how does kind of a consultation work?
Right? So you have to really define that. And we have many, many meetings before I understand really the essence of somebody. And there is a lot of trust that has to be had. And listen, we can't pretend that money's not important. It is now something that we need to survive in this world. But I think that's why your training is so successful. Because $1 million, okay, fine, great, but why? How do you connect with that? What is that $1 million a year going to do for you? Is it going to create a beautiful lifestyle? Is it going to create a legacy for your children? Is it going to help you grow your business? Is there a problem in the world that you want to solve? Mm-hmm. But that takes a long time to figure out. And So I'll give you a short little story. So I grew up with an older brother who we're estranged, and he was quite abusive to me. And I was working with my coach a couple weeks ago, and she said, you know, your need because of what happened to you as a child was approval. I was always looking for his approval. He thought I was a goody-goody. I actually ended up shoplifting, and then I got
Just
caught.
to kind of prove him wrong. Like,
yeah, except that I got caught. So that was not so great. My parents were going through a divorce. My mother thought I'd run away. And anyway, but I remember being in my bedroom, sitting on the floor crying, and he walked by the door, and he kind of went, and for a second I had his approval because I'd done something bad. Anyway, so my need is approval. My value is acceptance. So I have created a women's entrepreneur community. I've actually newly created a community for couples who are co-founders, so life partners who also run a business together, or they're both entrepreneurs. And I like to say, if you come, it's a bit of the island of misfits, because we're all people that don't really feel like we belong in other areas. But once you enter into this sacred, safe space where you are going to share what your current business challenges are, which might be money, might be health, it might be, culture issues, who knows, but that there is complete and utter acceptance for who you are. So what you're doing with your training is way more valuable, because the person may make half that amount and be thrilled, or twice that amount, and feel the power of what they can do with it.
Well, acceptance is so interesting. Our logo, like we have it on all our sweatshirts, it says you are enough, right? This kind of thing that we want each individual who comes into our training to believe is that you don't need to pretend to be someone else. You don't need to dress like someone else, look like someone else, act like someone else. You are enough just as you are. And when you start to give people that permission, you start to realize, like, they don't necessarily want the $1 million, or they wanted the $1 million because they'll say, people kind of lie to you at the start, right? I want $1 million because I want to help people. We hear that a lot as well, but how do you want to help people? And why did you buy that car then if you really want to help people? And you start to unpack like all these deep embedded things that people have oftentimes from their childhood. And you don't need necessarily a bad or a traumatic childhood, but we all bring these things along with us, and it usually does stem from some place of acceptance. And we always like to say, like, if you're living like a happy life and you're at peace, then that's usually more than enough. So I really try to unpack the things like why the car, why the belt, what do the clothes say about you? Not that I think clothes are bad. I love fashion. I mean, my community knows this about me. Like, I love clothes. Yep. But what is it that I'm either trying to hide, cover up, let the world know about me? What does it say about me to the world, right? And so you start to unpack all these things. I'm so curious, like your average person who comes to see you, is it usually couples or individuals?
Right now, I'm working with a lot of women who are in their 50s. Yeah. Either because they're divorced or they're just at a point in time where when you're a woman and you turn 50, all of a sudden you feel there is a timeline as to things that you want to accomplish in the world. And one of them is, generally speaking, the women I work with, is they want to have some impact. So we're working a lot with women, but yeah, couples and families. So going back to what you were saying about you are enough, because I think that's really, really important. And I've had coaches since I was in my 20s, because I think it's deeply, deeply important to be comfortable with who you are, to help other people. And it also attracts other people then, because people are attracted to authenticity, and they can tell that expression, you're comfortable in your own skin. But the three common human lies are, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, and I'm not enough. So I'm curious what happened to you for you to be able to uncover that I am not worthy is such an incredibly common feeling for people.
So common.
You must have had a story, right?
Thank you for turning this around, actually. You should be interviewing me. Great question, because it's very clear to me. Like, growing up, I was very fortunate. Like I said, my dad worked. He had a great job. My mom was at home. I felt very loved by my family, very accepted by my family. It wasn't until we joined a ski club that I started to realize the type of wealth other people had.
Right.
And all the things that other people had, and the lifestyles they afforded. That money bought my friends, my peers, opportunity that I didn't have. So like if they had better ski equipment, or they had certain things that made them more aerodynamic than me, or they had extra lessons and I didn't have that. And she started to realize that at the baseline, even if I was perhaps more talented than some, it was the money that really propelled a lot of people into like the next stratosphere. So it allowed them to be better than I was. And that kind of always agitated me, because I realized like money was the problem here. And so I think for so long I tried to compensate, and I was very ambitious because it wasn't going to come passed down from my parents like theirs was necessarily going to be passed down to them. I have a lot of friends whose parents gave them businesses and things like that. I knew I had to kind of earn mine on my own. And that was kind of my like, I belong here too.
Yep.
I think that was,
Yep.
for me, very, very important. And I think you're right. Everyone has a different story with it.
Yep.
It's about kind of like going back and saying like, okay, this is where it stems from. Now that I've, pinpointed it, what am I going to do about it? Or is it something that I even want to do anything about anymore? Because sometimes we're on a path and you're like, why am I even going down this path? It doesn't make me happy. Maybe it's a career, a relationship, and we do all these things for other people to get the approval.
Yep.
And then when you get it, you kind of like, I was climbing up the wrong tree all along.
Yep.
And maybe you feel that way when working with people who are, I feel like in their 50s, divorced perhaps, and then it's like, you know what, I was doing all these things for all these other people, and now it's my time to kind of do something that feels really good to me.
Sure, and I mean, knowledge is power as well, right? One of the interesting things that often comes up in conversations working with couples is financial infidelity.
Oh, like hiding things from each other.
Hiding, spending habits, taking risk with an asset or an investment that the one person didn't know about, or they lost money and now they have to tell that person.
Are you kind of like the middleman in that regard? Like one of the couple tells you, hey, look, I got to let my spouse know that this has happened. And, are you truly like the therapist at that point? Like, I'm going to sit and kind of mediate this situation, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this long enough that I can help the people understand the different perspectives as to what was going on, and to dial it back and to understand potentially why were those actions taken. And when you do a financial plan, the hardest part with clients is to get the data, because a lot of people don't want to look at the data, or they don't even know the data or where to find it. So that's, what is your mortgage payment? How much money do you have invested? How much money do you owe? Do you know what your parents' will says? There's all those sorts of things. And so when you get out the data and you put it on a visual board, and then somebody starts to get uncomfortable because they haven't been so truthful, and now it's coming
Why
out.
are the credit card statements so high? Right?
Well, or as I say, really risky investments. There's a lot of people who chase the golden lottery ticket, and a lot of people have made a lot of money in Tesla. A lot of people have lost a lot of money in Tesla.
Yes.
You could say the same with cannabis. And I mean, we do not touch anything trendy like that.
So that's a great segue. I want to get into that. What have you seen kind of in the past? Obviously, maybe trendy things. You've mentioned a few names. But when someone comes to you and they say, look, like I want financial freedom. I want to build wealth. This is what I've been up to. Or maybe I've been up to nothing and I haven't really done anything, but I'm starting to make some money and I know I need to invest. Where do you kind of advise they start?
So my husband John and I.
My husband's name's John too.
Oh, so many
classic.
good Johns out there. So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this is actually a third marriage for John and I. We got married on last Labor Day weekend.
Oh,
so I've been a single mom for 17 years. I've been through some marriages. I have, anyway, made a lot of money, had to give a lot of money away. So I've pretty much gone through everything that any client needs to go through. But so John and I were sitting around one night trying to define what is true wealth. And we really came to the conclusion that if only 20% of the revenue, income, rental income, investment income, whatever it is, but if you only need 20% of your revenue to run your lifestyle, you really will never, ever, ever worry about money. And what we often see is the inverse. People have 80% of their assets in hard assets that are a cost: cottages, chalets, houses, cars, clubs, private schools, whatever. They're
Right.
not income producing assets. So how do we work with people, and it doesn't matter whether it's 600,000, 6 million, 60 million, the strategy is the same. Your lifestyle, at a point where you are going to use your assets only to live off of, it should only be at about 20%.
20%. Uh-oh,
So-
I'm getting hot.
But that's for
Getting
true.
hot.
But that's for true wealth,
Yes.
which is not accessible to most people. But if you said, what is true wealth?
Yes, 20%.
And, I was saying to you when we arrived, I posted something on LinkedIn that was a snapshot of a Toronto Star article about the fact that the banks are now offering 47-year mortgages. I've seen 50-year mortgages. Well, you do the amount of interest you're going to pay to a bank, over 50 years, you're probably paying twice what the value of the house is. So we're not building wealth
it's like credit card
necessarily.
debt, right? Like it ends up being like you pay for the same thing twice.
So,
You hear
do
it.
you want to own a home because it makes you feel good, which is the Canadian dream, to
Yes.
own a home? Or do you want to own a home because you think it's going to build wealth? And in Toronto, again, we're one of the most expensive cities in the world, so it's very, very difficult to buy a home. I get that. But that doesn't mean you can't build a really financially beautiful life. It just might not be what your parents did, which was buy a house and put some money in an RSP.
Question the assumptions, right? Maybe it's buy an investment property and
Maybe
live,
you
and
buy
maybe
something
no property.
in Hamilton
Right,
or
yeah.
Godrich, and somebody else is paying your mortgage for you.
Yeah, and you rent because maybe that makes a lot more sense. And then you can
Yeah.
at least get in the market. We have some people on our team, younger, they talk often about the difficulty in trying to own a home. And a lot of them have said, I feel like I've given up on this dream. And, I think it's more about reshaping the dream. Like you said, we actually have some people who bought in Hamilton, London, where they're renting in Toronto, but at least they got their kind of foot in the door with real estate. Do you tend to advise that people try to buy real estate? Is that like something, particularly an investment property? Is that something that you advise people to do, or?
It depends, right? It really depends on the person, the amount of money they have. We invest in companies, in stocks, but my job is to have the overall view with people and to help them build their dreams. So I think real estate is wonderful because either someone else is paying your mortgage or you're paying your mortgage. There is that forced savings. The other thing is, if you buy an investment property, and you probably talk about this with your clients, that you could tax deduct the mortgage cost. So you could put $30,000 a year into an RSP, which is a tax deduction.
Yeah.
Or if you have a mortgage that costs you $30,000 a year on an investment property, that's tax deductible. So a mortgage on your principal residence is not tax deductible.
Yeah.
So it's working with the person on their cash flow and their expectations. Where I've had an issue, Laura, in the past with some real estate brokers, and in a way I can't blame them because at a certain age you guys have never seen, if you're under age 40 or 45, you've never seen interest rates above 3%. So I have a couple of clients who were on this spreadsheet path of buying 8 condos.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And all of the numbers were done at 2% mortgages.
Yes. Yeah.
And even as little as a year ago, I said to them, you have to go back to your real estate agent and get them to redo the numbers. They did it at 4. And I said, I'm sorry, you need to go back again because 4 is not appropriate either. So there just has to be reality in this because I have a couple of clients where they were going to buy one condo and then that was going to go up in value, so they were going to borrow the money from the increase in value to put the down payment on the next. And it was really beautiful while everything was at 2% and money was free. So I'm not for or against anything. Let's build wealth, but it has to be done on appropriate long-term data.
Realistic, right?
Realistic data. Otherwise, those people are actually going to be bankrupt. They're going to be scarred for life.
Yeah, and it can, like any plan can work as long as it's the right plan for the right people. Talk to me a little bit about stocks. You said you help your clients invest in businesses and stocks. Is there, you said, no go to something trendy. What makes something trendy? And that's why you don't want to touch it versus, maybe say a bank stock because there's so much history in there? Like, how do you compare the two?
Yeah. So, I mean, to be clear, I do the financial planning. I look after all the money psychology and what do you want to do, and then we protect you and your family and your assets with life insurance, critical illness, group benefits, buy-sell agreements, and because a lot of my clients are entrepreneurs. And then our investment committee, and my husband, who's the CEO and CIO, Chief Investment Officer, they run the money side of things.
Okay.
We're really simple. We want to protect your money and grow it. In fact, in 2023, we were up 30%. We didn't do anything crazy. We just owned the best companies in the world, which happen to be in the US.
Okay.
And some people take homage to that because they say, but I live in Canada. I love being here. It's a great country. And it is. But it's not, there's not enough companies in Canada to grow your money. And the bank stocks, if you go back, for instance, RBC back to 2008, they haven't really gone anywhere. Mm-hmm. And you might be paying a dividend, but you're losing money on
the opportunity cost, I guess.
Well, or just the stock hasn't gone anywhere.
Gotcha.
So, for instance, Tesla. Lots of people have made lots and lots of money on Tesla. But the company itself never made business sense. And in fact, in the papers in December 2023, there was a recall on 2 million Tesla cars, right?
Yeah.
So people loved Elon so much, they thought he was a god, that they just wanted to back him in that stock. So we won't buy a stock that doesn't make business sense.
So is it like when people it's either they're too late maybe to the game, right? Maybe it was the earlier people.
Well, Tesla never made sense never made a profit.
Never made sense. So
it's never made profit. But that doesn't mean that some people didn't make a lot of money on it. And the same with cannabis. Some people made a lot of money. But it's very difficult on your own accord to say, when do you get out? When do you sell Tesla? When did you sell cannabis? And now there's psilocybin coming on the market.
Yes,
and that'll be some interesting plays. So some people want to play the lottery ticket. And if we have clients who want to do that, they do that in a separate DIY account. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
So it really depends on the objective of the person. And the people that come to us, they like our philosophy, so we fit them and they fit us. But we're not for everybody.
I presume you're not really a make a quick buck kind of strategist.
We don't do a lot of trading.
But I imagine a lot of people, that's what they want, right? We all want the blue magic pill. I want to be rich tomorrow. And that's, I think, how you get into some of those riskier stocks. Like even me with real estate, I do tend to advise my clients if they buy a pre-construction condo, for example, you have to go into it with the approach of I'm going to hold it, because if you're not holding it for long enough, you will be subject to whatever's happening in the market. Like over the long run, you probably will win, depending, but yes, you will likely win over time. But in the short term, you might lose. So I tend to recommend that. Is that similar for you guys?
Absolutely. And I also just think that is awesome advice. I mean, I looked at the fact when I sold my house and then John and I bought a condo together in April of 2020, my transaction fees were $300,000. It was 5% to sell my house, and then it was 3% land transfer fees on the new place, legal fees, moving fees. So that money's gone forever. And so I would say the same things to clients who are buying real estate. Just have a longer time horizon, because if you've made a mistake and you have to move, it's expensive. Or if you have to sell out on a rental property because you can't afford it anymore, it's potentially not the right period of time. I bought my first house in 1995 and I paid less for it, and this is in Toronto, I paid less for it than the people who bought it in 1984 because of the housing collapse. So, real estate in Toronto, well, I mean, that was a long time ago,
right? That
was
great timing, yeah.
But interest rates have come down for 25 years, which has driven the increase in value in real estate. So, I think real estate long-term is a fantastic investment. But this flipping at the rates that we're at today, I just think is dangerous for a lot of people if they don't have the right cash flow. So, that just behooves you to not get over your skis and make sure that you've got a buffer zone. So if interest rates go from here to here, that you're okay with that.
Yeah, kind of like worst case scenario planning. Whenever we run our pro forma, back in the day, I remember we used to always double the interest rate because we would tell our clients, and at that time that probably wasn't even enough, but at least it was more conservative than what many people were doing, right? So we'd say worst case scenario, your interest rate's at 5%, which seemed astronomical at the time. Yeah. Now I'm like, we probably should have been even more conservative, but a lot of people were just running the numbers at whatever the interest rate was at that time, which is great. But what happens? Worst case scenario, right? So it's all this type of planning. You've started a lot of things in conjunction with what you do on the daily. The Collective Women's Entrepreneur Community, for example. I was hoping you could shed some light on what that is and why you started it and maybe how it relates to what you do on the daily.
Yeah, I know for sure. I'm not anti-men. I am so pro-men because my father has been my mentor forever. I worked with him for 30 years. My husband is one of my biggest supporters. However, there are opportunities where when women come together, they can talk about subjects that are very comfortable for them and maybe not so much for the men. So what I found with my women clients, particularly women who are moms, is that, it's just bullshit, work-life balance if you have a career and a family. Like, it doesn't exist. Some weeks your family will be balanced and other weeks your business will be balanced, but rarely is it all the same.
Got you, yeah.
But so it was just a safe place for women to come together and say, wow, I've got this culture issue going on. Or, not so long ago, there was a lot of Me Too stuff going on, and that might have been even with a supplier, or it could have been your business partner. But where was there a safe place to talk about this and to get immediate feedback as to how you might be able to handle that? So through the Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a worldwide organization for entrepreneurs, I learned how to run a forum group. And so I interview every woman just so that there's a fit and they know what they're coming into. And we open up every meeting with a meditation to just ground us, because everybody's super hyper when they first come in. And then because I've interviewed them and they have emailed me their current business challenge the week before the meeting, I sit them at a table of 4 other entrepreneur women and a moderator. And the moderator is a woman who's sold a business and is now coaching. And each woman has a half an hour to talk about their business challenge, and then you get experiential feedback. So if you said to me, wow, Libby, on our team, there's a real cultural issue. Maybe the women aren't getting along so well. And I might say, oh gosh, Laura, you know what? We went through this a year and a half ago, and here's something I did to help with our cultural issues. We had a book that we read about leadership and then discussed it, and da-da-da-da. You can't be insulted because I'm not telling you what to do. I'm sharing a story with you about how I solved a similar problem.
Right, that's so interesting because women often, to relate to other women, when you're just having a conversation with your girlfriend, for example, and you say, oh, this happened to me. We were kind of laughing about menopause, for example, earlier. Yep. I suspect that this will happen in my group of girlfriends in the near future. Well, in the future for sure. And then it's, oh, me too. Like that happened to me, and then everyone starts telling their story. Sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes it's like you don't always want to feel like you have to relate on such a personal level. But I think when people come to something like this, they expect it, right? It's like I want the feedback. I expect the feedback. I'm not just trying to unload, which sometimes people want to.
It's
they
solutions.
Want solutions.
They are
right?
It's like going to a therapist who just listens to you and you're supposed to figure it out yourself, versus here's my situation, and then you have a half an hour where it's all about you, and you have other women entrepreneurs weighing in, and maybe somebody's in digital marketing at your table, and maybe someone's in sales, and somebody's in IT, and so you're actually, it is about taking your business to the level you want it to, which is not always scaling it to be a $50 million business, but it is very much talking about your business and then also encouraging women to do business together, because men were brought up to bring in their own, right? If you see a male CEO of a company, generally speaking, you will, within a short period of time, see other men that he really trusts brought in. And women were never taught how to do this. We see each other as competition.
Yeah, we do. And I'm sure there's a physiological or adaptive evolutionary reason for this, right? I've also heard that there's reasons like women tend to be gossipy because that actually has helped our species over time. understand like who's the man that's going to actually help and support versus the one that's going to cheat and leave and all these things. Like there's like these deep embedded issues. How do you kind of overcome some of those challenges in the moment with some of these women who maybe aren't apt to share because their experiences with women in the past maybe have been catty or not that great? Is it the meditation?
That's why the meditation and the mindfulness and a journal is, opening up about your inner thoughts. But that's why I interview everybody. So I explain it to them. I mean, out of a group of 250 women all over Ontario, we just have 40 to each meeting 3 times a year. So there's no membership fee. You come if you feel like it. If you don't feel like you need that kind of help right now, then that's fine. The community is still open to you, and I'll still introduce you to anybody. But the women who come deeply, deeply feel empowered at the end of it, that they have answers to what it is that they're looking for. So, and then the last meeting I had, 5 women said, "Oh my God, Libby, it was so amazing because you sat us at a table where we were all in business with our spouses. That was so cool." And I said, "Well, that's funny because I didn't put you together because of that reason." And the guys said, "We would like something like this." So now we are having meetings 3 times a year where, again, we open with a meditation and a mindfulness and why it's a reminding of why we came together to create something that reflects what we want to, as people, put out into the world and our business to have impact. And then we separate the life partners to separate tables, and then again you can talk about your feelings and where it is you want to go with your business and potentially the issues around working with somebody that you go home and live with. And
what are some of those issues, generally speaking?
Well, so there's one couple that there's a little bit of an age difference, and he is getting ready to want to sell the business and she's not ready yet to sell the business.
Different life stages.
Yeah, she's just not done with it yet. And there's situations whether you want the kids to come into the business or not. And if you want the kids to come in, should they buy in or should you just be giving it to them? You talked about that. So personally, I believe that if you have a child coming into the business, if they don't feel that the business is enough of a good business to invest in with their own money, then why should they be there? Like, they have to have some skin in the game. Because if you're just handed a business, you're like, okay, I'm sure that person's worked very hard in the business and knows what they're doing. But if they had to put up some of their own money to invest in it, it means they believe in it. Right. And they're really, really invested in it. Yeah, they're invested in it. So I believe that there has to be some skin in the game. And again, this comes back to values. So not every family has to believe what I believe. My job is to listen to you and help guide you in whatever structure it is.
Must be hard though at times.
Do, so
holding your mouth.
Well, I'm not so good at that. Yeah, no, I'm not so good at that.
Believe,
with the life and they want to know what my opinions and my beliefs are and my experience. But I mean, my son is traveling, and he made his own money tree planting. And he's so proud of the fact that it's his own money that he's going traveling with. And some of his friends were given money, which is fine. But Robbie, I know, is like, no, I did this myself. And I may have to get a job partway through it, but that's okay. My value is that my children understand the value of money, that they have independence, and that they own whatever experiences they're having, versus me taking away that experience by saying, "Oh, here's the credit card. Go buy, your plane ticket."
There's sometimes a lot of value in failing, too, as well, right? Like, 100%. So let's say it doesn't necessarily go the way he thought. The stars don't align, and he has to get the job, or he comes back, tail between his legs, whatever it is, because things happen. I'm not suggesting that would with your son, but there's that experience. Now he has an emotional tie to it too. Right? Maybe in the future, he'll start to consider the 80-20 rule that you sort of set out, let's not spend all the money on travel or whatever it is. But regardless, he's going to have a fantastic experience along the way.
I believe, Laura, in the struggle. And I think your success has come from a place, and it was an interesting story, how you perceived that money was the differentiator, right?
Yeah.
So I believe in the struggle, and when we look at some of the families that have moved to Canada are now some of the wealthiest families, and they came from other countries where they were bricklayers and now they're major developers, and they look at their kids or their grandkids and they go, where's the fire in the belly? I don't get it. We had to struggle. But they brought up their kids and their grandkids in such a manner that they didn't want to see their kids struggle and suffer the way they did.
Yeah.
So they changed the game.
Well, it's kind of like every generation almost gets a little bit softer because each parent wants more for their kids than they have.
Right, but I believe there are ways still of allowing the kids and the grandkids, and when I say kids, adult kids, they could be my age, but to have some sort of a personal struggle to create that fire in the belly. Or, it might not have anything to do with running the family business. It might be, wow, I'm actually really good at whatever that is, and we have to identify that, and then to be able to say, I'm going to use this money that was given to me to go and make myself feel good because I've identified what my gift and my purpose is. And I know more than anything I know, every single person has a gift and a purpose. And if we can take the time to figure out what that is and then relate it back to how are you going to use this gift called money to go and create that, it's a really beautiful, empowering thing.
I must say, I didn't know you before meeting you today, so I wasn't sure how our conversation would go. And I didn't necessarily, when you have kind of preconceived notions about what you're going to talk about and who you're going to meet, when I think of a financial consultant, I don't necessarily envision someone who's so worried about the gift that everyone has to give or meditating and journaling. So I'm a little surprised to hear some of these things because I guess my preconceived notion, just as people have them about realtors and whatnot,
sure.
I get them as well. Has that kind of always been a part of your life or something you more adopted just through your career journey?
No, I mean, sometimes I say to John, I'm sorry, I'm probably not the easiest person to live with because I am obsessed with being on a quest, living my best life and understanding who I am and what my purpose is here. So I have always hired people, like you, somebody who will train me to be very good at what I do, or coaches who will train me to understand what is my gift, what is my purpose, and what do I want to create. So right now I'm actually working with Andrea Sampson from Talk Boutique, and she is helping me get really, really clear on what my message is and what is my zone of genius and what do I want to do with it. And I really want to work with people who already have money because they can have influence on our world. And they want to figure out and go on this journey, what is their gift and what is their purpose, and then use their money to do that. So as I said before, that could be quitting their corporate job and going into their own business. It could be one young man who sold his business, now owns a whole bunch of Airbnbs. It could be building a beautiful life for your family and maybe choosing to stay home and bring up the kids because you missed the first 10 years of their life. It could be leaving a legacy, or it could be I'm really concerned about education in Canada or a particular disease, or the new generation isn't so interested on giving money to education and hospitals. Mm-hmm. They really are more interested in sort of more grassroots things. But money can be an incredible gift when you stop using it to define yourself. So then our job as a firm is then to protect that money, because when you pass on assets in Canada, it's very expensive. So we use life insurance to pay the capital gains taxes and estate taxes so assets make it to the next generation. Clients who have massive real estate portfolios, when they die and leave those assets to the kids, all the capital gains costs, the recapture of the capital cost allowance is all taken back. So you have to have cash to pay the taxes. So we use insurance to do that. And then our investment team protects and grows the money so that it can do what you want it to do. But it's separate. It's not defining who you are. And that is really hard work.
Would you say that's the number one reason that kind of gets in people's way? Because a lot of people say, I want a legacy, I want to own a business, one day I'll do this, one day I'll do that. And you work with people, you actually get them to take that step. Is it the sacrifice people think they have to make that's holding them back? Fear? What do you think is the differentiator between the people who actually move forward with like these hopes and dreams versus everybody else?
Yeah, I don't think it's about sacrifice. Look, no matter how much money you make, as long as you are spending less than what you make, you're going to be okay. All right? But we now live in a world, and you will see RSP season's coming up. Mm-hmm. Every bloody billboard will be trying to get you to put money into an RSP. So the banks will want you to borrow it from them. So ka-ching, they make money loaning it to you. And you only pay off the loan just before you have to do it again the next January, February. And then when you get money from a bank to put in your RSP, you have to invest in their mutual funds. So if you borrow money from TD, your portfolio then has to go into a TD portfolio. Yeah. So ka-ching. And
they're smart, eh?
well, they are. But I was working with some people who were embarrassed that they can't put money in an RSP, and in fact, they didn't need to put money in an RSP.
And you're thinking, what are you even doing? Why does it matter? Yeah.
But they were just like, oh my gosh. And I said, but
because that's also the Canadian dream, right? Like not just owning property, but like putting money into your RSP is like, I mean, when I think of my dad, you've said a couple things that remind me of him, which was you never spend more money than you make. He just drilled that into my head. But he was big on putting money into his RSPs. And I've had to like reteach myself that maybe that's not my journey. Again, not to say that people who do is wrong, but like maybe I needed that money to start growing a business instead, which my dad didn't have to do. So there's different reasons for doing things. So I guess, I like to think it's maybe a belief in themselves. People don't always necessarily know that they can.
So I think, Laura, that one of the issues with human beings is that we would like there to always be certainty in life, and there's not. So I've been reading this book that has been really beautiful about reminding me, because there's some really important things in my life that I want to do or I know I will live with regret. And if I'm at point A, and I want to go to point B as my big, hairy, audacious goal that really excites me and how I want to give back, and how I want to take all of my experiences and understanding of people and help them. If B just really looks like A with a bit of paint on it, I'm just on a path. I'm not on a quest. And I am on a quest. And when you are on a quest, the very definition of that is that there is uncertainty and you don't know where you're going. But if you stick to a quest and when you have failure, you look at it as a lesson and you go, okay, that didn't work. So now I'm going to go back and do it this way. I'm not saying that that's easy. It's not easy, but you can train the brain to go, okay, that was a failure. Let's pick ourselves up.
And that doesn't mean the quest is wrong either, right? It just means that's a hurdle. Or what's the book that you're reading that talks about that?
I know. I meant to look.
That's okay.
Look into
you're like, don't ask me about the name of the.
No, because I just got it was on the subway. But one of my favorite books by Lynn Twist is The Soul of Money. And it is a beautiful book. She was trying to, or she wasn't trying to, she was working on solving world hunger. And it's a really, really interesting book. And one of the things that she turned me on to is a lot of people of great means, of great wealth, have a lot of insecurities around money.
Yes.
And a lot of it is that their purpose and their gift is just taken away from them, they feel, because they wake up in the morning and they don't necessarily have to go and earn a dollar. Or a lot of people want something from them. I had a girlfriend who just
sold... Can't trust your relationships necessarily.
Well, a girlfriend just sold her business, and a whole bunch of people came to her and said, can you loan me some money? And she was like... And they got upset with her when she said no.
Like she owed it to them.
Yeah, like, what do you care? You have more money than you need, so you should be giving this to us. And so money can be a two-pronged or a three-pronged thing. And so you're a trainer. I'm a money trainer. I'm going to really help you to understand what do you want your money to do with you.
So when's the right time to reach out to you or someone like you? As early as humanly possible? Like the day you turn 18 or?
Absolutely, as early as possible. But there's so much free stuff today, Laura. Like, we're so fortunate. We're not equipped to help somebody with a $50,000 RSP. We have a $500,000 minimum. But there's so much stuff for free on YouTube. And, Wealthsimple is a marketing company, really. But it is a fantastic place to be able to open up an account and start to learn. And I often
You
encourage...
don't learn a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, I often encourage young people to have a group of people that you get together with, and maybe all pick stocks. Everybody throws $100 in, and you buy some stocks, or you buy an ETF or whatever, and really learn what are the companies in there, and which ones are working and which ones aren't.
Less risk, right? Because you've put it over a group of people.
Well, it's not about risk. That's about learning at that point.
Got it.
Because ETFs and mutual funds, I mean, sometimes you could own 5 mutual funds and you own thousands of stocks. And you might, if they're all in a Canadian equity fund, then they all are owning similar things. And so risk is a completely different topic, but it's just about empowering yourself. And so there's lots of coaches, lots of teachers, lots of strategies online. And there's lots of people who really want to help with younger people when they're first starting out. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I kind of want to finish our chat today with, the reality of 2024. We're in it now. What do you see for 2024? What would you kind of leave as a lasting piece of advice for people to get through this year or to make something of this year? Are we in survival mode? Are we in thriving mode? Where do you kind of see the year heading?
As a trainer, Laura, I'm sure you know that there are always lots of people that soar during times of recessions. So there is going to be a lot of pain, I think, in 2024 as many, many mortgages come due, many. And people are going to have to make choices. Do they sell? Do they go into their savings? For how long can they afford these larger mortgage payments? But generally speaking, money, both the stock market, interest rates, mortgage rates, it is cyclical. So the important thing is to be able to hang on. And I really encourage people, we may see interest rates in Canada go down a little bit, but I really encourage people to pre-think this before the mortgage comes up, months and months and months in advance. And really take a look at what are the resources I have in case this is going to cost me a lot more money than I thought. So that we are not going into things from a place of fear, right, as you said, because fear generally clouds how you make a decision.
Do you suggest people not read too many headlines unless they're going to kind of do the
Don't watch the
digital
news.
Okay, thank you.
Not watch the news.
Because that's what I hear so often from people. I'm afraid, but that's the whole point of the news, because it keeps you hooked, because it kind of drums up these fearful things. And if you read the headlines and then you actually read the article, and sometimes one doesn't even have anything to do with the other. And so I tend to avoid it a little bit now because I feel like it doesn't do me any good. And I'm glad to hear someone of your caliber.
So pay off your highest interest rate debt first. If you do have credit card debt, pay that off first. Make sure you have savings for sure. There's probably going to be a fair amount of layoffs too. So there's going to be a whole generation of 20s and 30-somethings, people who have never been in a market where it's not easy to get a job. Mm-hmm. They've never been in a market where interest rates are higher than 2%. So this is where there needs to be a reality check, and people need to be really careful about getting over their skis and getting into debt. Declaring bankruptcy is not fun. That credit rating stays with you for a long time. But also really being aware, if you need to go and buy a car, don't let that salesman say, oh, well, you can afford $500 a month, so here are all the cars at $500 a month. You have to say, no, this is the amount of money I have to spend, and therefore, this is what I want to buy. And the same with a house,
yes.
This whole FOMO thing. So this is what I can afford to buy. Okay, well, maybe I don't buy right now, or I buy in a different area. I mean, you can help with all of that.
Well, and it's funny because just because the mortgage broker said you can afford something for a house doesn't mean you have to buy up until that point either. I think for me, the biggest takeaway, I've been decent at writing down all my expenses. I do it about every 3 months, and sometimes it is shocking.
Yeah.
Even just looking at the subscriptions, like the Netflixes and the YouTube subscriptions, so you have a premium account, all those little subscriptions, going through those, do I need all these things? going through I lost my credit card, and then they cancel it, and then everything, you get to decide now what you renew.
It's fabulous, right?
It's a fantastic
all those
strategy.
little things that you're like, oh,
I don't really need it. I don't really use it. I'm thinking right now, I have some subscriptions that I know I should cancel, so that forces it. But oftentimes people think, well, I'm not currently spending more than I make, so I'm in a good place. But I think it's more about slowly moving the needle towards the 20/80, right? I might not be at 20% spend.
That's the goal.
Now. That's the goal. But can I just move the needle toward that? I think is kind of my big takeaway, because sometimes people are in that all or nothing mentality, right? Like, if I can't do it perfectly, then why do it at all? But that's not really it. Like, we've learned that with diet and exercise, and everyone knows instinctively in their mind that that's not really how it works, but the way we act isn't always that. Yep. So I feel like that was such a great takeaway. Yep. Anything else that you'd like to kind of share, either your journey or what you're up to in the future with our listeners before we end here today?
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you just for the awareness of the fact that I think people really need to empower themselves with money. I don't know anybody who's meeting with themselves every 3 months to write that down. So that's one of the things I usually say to people is have a date with yourself and money. Yes. Get really close with your numbers.
It's scary. I'm not going to lie. Every time I'm stressed out before, right? And I kind of push it off. Sometimes it's 4 months, but I really do try just to see where it is.
Yeah, no, it's super important. So I'm all about live events, so we will be at some point in 2024 be inviting people to share with us their money stories in a live theater environment, and then we'll be working with some people. And so in real time, we'll be working with somebody around their money value systems, their money stories, and then how that relates to themselves. Because I believe in the power of sharing your story. It takes away the hold that story has over you. And so when you can publicly say, here's my situation, it's not that scary at the end of it. And then you can start to actually solve that problem when you face it. Yeah. So I'm really, really excited to make talking about money just an everyday table conversation with your friends, your lovers, your parents,
all the people we currently hide it all from.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's such a great point. I love that. I love what you're doing online. I definitely want to make sure that
thank you.
If you guys have enjoyed this conversation, which I'm sure you have, and you want more information, you do a lot. You talked about getting access to free information. Well, first and foremost, be sure to follow you. LinkedIn was probably your best place.
Yep.
Right? You're getting this information. Someone's giving it to you guys for free, just so that you can move the needle in your own life. And I think that's absolutely fantastic. So I truly thank you for being here with me today.
Thank you, Laura. You're doing a great service.
Thank you so much. And guys, be sure, this is 2024, so we're starting off on the right foot here. Make that first date with yourself. 3 months from today, it's going to be March. Make a date, sit down with yourself, and really take a look at where the finances are going. That's the first step in the right direction. And we will see you next time.